stops are the most common sounds in human languages. All right. In stop, there are two sub-processes. One, there is a complete closure. Okay, the air passage is completely blocked, is closed off, right? And then the second process within stop is that it is produced, like it is released in shape of burst, right? So for stop, there are two processes. The first one is to block the air passage completely. This is stop stricture, right? And then the air passage, the pressure is created and it is released all of a sudden. And this all of a sudden release of pressure is called burst. So there is burst also, right? So in stop, complete closure and then sudden release. Two sub-processes are there. There are oral stops and there are nasal stops, right? And these stops are also called plosives, right? In case of oral stops, there is complete stoppage, and this is called stop stricture. The stricture is in the shape of blockage to the air passage. And the second distinguishable point for oral stop is that the velum is closed. And by closed velum, I mean that the soft palate means the velum, it is raised, right? So the air passage is, stopped from the nasal cavity and it is going through the oral cavity. And that's why these sounds are called oral stops. So these 2 points are distinguishable from nasal stops. And nasal stops are basically the sounds in which the structure is the same, complete blockage, complete stoppage, right? But this time, in the case of nasal stop, the velum is open. And by open velum, I mean that it is lowered. It is lowered and the air passage is allowed to go through the nasal cavity, right? So these are nasal stops like ma, na, and engma sound, right? So in these sounds, the soft palate, the velum, it is lowered and it is open to allow the air passage to pass through the nasal cavity. All right. If you see within this animation, right, first there is a complete blockage, okay? Like per, if you just prepare yourself in order to pronounce this per sound, per. So both lips, they stop the air passage and a pressure is built here, right? This pressure is built here and then all of a sudden this pressure is released. When this pressure is released, it is in the shape of a burst, right? And the per sound is pronounced, right? So this is the presentation of oral stop, right? And let me also show you this nasality, right? That how is the air passage allowed to go through the nasal cavity, right? You see, this velum, the soft palate, it is lowered, right? And it is giving the way for the air passage to pass through the nasal cavity, right? So this is the case of nasal airflow and in order to create nasal stop, right? So there are, as we discussed, there are two types of stops, oral stops and nasal stops. Stops are also called plosives, and stops are the most common sounds found in English and many other languages. And stops are consisted of two sub-processes. The first is the creation of a blockage, a pressure, and then the release, the sudden release of that pressure, right? And these two processes together make stops to occur.